Autumn sunlight streamed through the maple trees that line the lakeside chapel in Portland, casting golden rays on the little white building where Maya Delaney had once believed today would be one of the happiest days of her life. Dressed in a soft cream gown that hugged her slender figure, her hair swept up with delicate baby's breath tucked in, she looked like a flower ready to bloom again after years of surviving a storm. She still carried the weight of grief. Her husband had died 2 years ago in a sudden accident, but today felt like hope. Her 6-year-old daughter Lila stood proudly at her side, the only constant in a life that had unraveled once before. Today, Maya wasn't just marrying a man, Cole Brennan. She was marrying safety, trust, peace. Music played. Guests stood as Maya walked slowly down the aisle, sprinkled with white rose petals. She held Lila's hand tightly, heart swelling with emotion. But at the altar, only the officiant waited. Cole wasn't there. The officiant cleared his throat and looked to the side. The room quieted. No footsteps, no door opening, just the pounding of Maya's heart. Not from joy, but from panic building by the second. "He's coming. He's just late," she whispered to herself, scanning the chapel doors like someone begging for a miracle. Lila tugged gently on her hand, her voice barely a breath. "Mama, where did the man go?" Maya froze. The question, so innocent, sliced straight through her. Whispers rippled through the guests, eyes filled with pity, concern, confusion, and a growing silence that wrapped around Maya's chest like a noose. Her hands trembled. The bouquet that once symbolized faith now felt like an anchor dragging her down. Her heart plummeted. She had spent weeks planning this day, believed in it, risked her heart to step forward after years of silence. And now in front of her daughter and over 100 guests, she was being left. Not quietly, but publicly. Just as her knees threatened to give out, a deep, steady voice echoed from the third pew. "She deserves better." Everyone turned. A tall man stood, his dark brown hair streaked with silver, sharp jawline and thoughtful eyes. He wore a tailored gray suit, walked with calm, unhurried steps down the aisle, as though immune to the tension around him. "I apologize for the interruption," he said, his voice carrying a soft French undertone. "But no one deserves to be abandoned like this, especially not a woman with such strength." Maya looked up at him, a stranger. She had never seen him before. Yet in his gaze was no pity, only something deeper, understanding. "I'm Lucas Marchand," he said, "and I have a proposal." Maya barely whispered. "What kind of proposal?" "Marry me," Lucas said. "Right here, right now." Gasps spread like wildfire through the room. Maya blinked. "You don't know me." "I know enough," Lucas replied. "I know you're a mother to a beautiful little girl. I saw the way you stood tall when your world collapsed, and I know you deserve to walk out of here with your dignity, not shame." Lila looked up at Lucas, her eyes wide and wondering. "He's sad like us, Mama," she whispered. "But his eyes get brighter when he looks at you." Maya inhaled sharply. Her heart still ached, but for the first time in years, the ache didn't crush her. It reminded her she was still alive. Lucas wasn't offering rescue. He was offering a beginning, one forged in quiet bravery, and something almost like hope. 2 hours later, Maya Delaney became the wife of a man whose name she had only learned minutes before. They didn't walk out of the chapel to applause and flower petals like she'd once dreamed. Instead, they went to a quiet courthouse in downtown Portland. No guests, just a judge, a clerk, and Lila, still in her light blue princess dress, standing between two strangers bound by circumstance and something unspoken. Lucas Marchand recited his vows with a voice deep and unwavering. "I promise to protect Maya and Lila, to honor their trust, and to build a home from the faith they've offered me today." Maya's voice shook, but she stood tall. I promise to try again, to believe in what's in front of me, even if it scares me. Their first kiss was soft and tentative, like two souls brushing past each other in a fog. Afterward, Lucas drove them to his lakeside home. The luxury car glided silently through streets covered in golden autumn leaves. Maya kept her gaze lowered, unsure what to say to the man beside her. He drove with a calm precision that made her feel safe and strangely distant. She studied his hands, strong but graceful. When he noticed her shiver, he didn't comment. He simply adjusted the air conditioning and passed her a folded coat from the back seat. The gesture made something tighten in her chest. Not fear, but the unfamiliar ache of being noticed. Lila stared at him cautiously, but when Lucas handed her a coloring book from nowhere in particular, the little girl quietly opened it and began to draw. His house was modern and beautiful, a glass-fronted estate nestled between pine trees in the stillness of the lake. But to Maya it felt hollow, too quiet, too clean. No family pictures, no toys, no trace of laughter. Mrs. Kira, my housekeeper, has weekends off, Lucas explained as he led them into a pristine kitchen that looked like a magazine cover. I hope you don't mind if I cook tonight. You cook? Maya asked, unsure what to call him. Lucas smiled. I won't pretend to be a chef, but I do a pretty decent grilled cheese. As he moved around the kitchen, Maya sat at the island, trying not to feel like an intruder. She didn't know why she hadn't walked away. Maybe it was Lila's eyes, or the weight of Lucas's hand on her shoulder earlier, or something she didn't have a name for. But it wasn't weakness. I'm an art therapist, she said when he asked about her work. She used to work full-time at a children's hospital. Budget cuts hit after the pandemic. Now she picked up hours at a downtown community center. The money barely covered rent, but she managed. Lucas didn't interrupt. He just listened, flipping sandwiches like each word mattered. And Lila's father? He asked gently. Car accident 2 years ago. A drunk driver ran a red light. David died instantly. Lila was in the back seat. She saw everything. Lucas paused for just a beat, then kept cooking. You've lost someone too, Maya said. He nodded slowly. My wife, Amelie, and our daughter, 3 years ago. Complications during childbirth. The kitchen filled with quiet again. Not silence, just space. Two people who had lost everything, now searching for something. Not happiness, not yet, but maybe a reason to try again. Maya woke in the middle of the night to the soft sound of footsteps on the wooden hallway. She glanced at the clock. 2:08 a.m. The small footsteps belonged to Lila. The little girl didn't cry or call out. She simply stood at Maya's bedroom door, clutching her frayed, stuffed rabbit, eyes wide with a quiet sorrow too deep for her age. Maya pulled back the covers, knelt down to meet her at eye level. Can't sleep, sweetheart? Lila nodded, then used a few simple signs Maya had once taught her. Scared, alone. Maya wrapped her in a hug, heart aching with tenderness. And for the first time since the day of the wedding, she realized Lila was trying. Even if not with words, she was reaching out. The next morning, Lucas served pancakes with maple syrup, hot coffee, and fresh squeezed orange juice. The kitchen was flooded with sunlight, but what struck Maya the most wasn't the meal. It was the way he pulled a chair close to Lila, opened a small book, and sat across from her with quiet patience. What are you doing? Maya asked, still pouring coffee. Teaching her sign language, Lucas said without looking up. If she's not ready to speak, we can learn to listen differently. Maya paused, her breath caught, not out of fear, but something deeper. Lucas hadn't asked Lila, why don't you speak, like so many others had? He'd asked, can we learn to speak your language instead? In the days that followed, the three of them became a tiny classroom in the living room. Lucas signed letters with his hands, labeled household items with their sign equivalents. made flashcards and turned guessing games into warm, giggly competitions with hugs or marshmallows as rewards. And something miraculous happened. Lila began to speak again, not with her voice, but with eyes that lit up when she signed something right, with smiles when she was understood, and with one small, powerful sign, Father, which she placed gently on Lucas's chest during bedtime stories. Maya stood in the hallway watching, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks. She didn't feel like a stranger in this house anymore. In these quiet, intentional moments, she felt her heart and her daughter's slowly stitching itself back together. One afternoon, as Lucas crouched under the sink fixing a leak and Maya painted at the kitchen table, she asked quietly, "Why are you doing all this?" Lucas looked up, hair tousled, shirt damp from water, and still smiled. "Because you and Lila deserve it." "But you don't owe us anything." Lucas nodded slowly, standing. "I've been dead inside for 3 years. Every day, every night, when I saw you standing there, at that wedding, abandoned but holding your daughter's hand, I remembered who I used to be." He stepped closer, voice softer now. "I didn't save you, Maya. You saved me." In that moment, Maya understood. Love doesn't always begin with fireworks. Sometimes it begins with understanding and a quiet whisper that says, "I'm here and I'm not leaving." No one said it aloud, but in the days that followed, the three of them began living like a real family. No new paperwork, no declarations, just warm dinners, quiet walks around the lake, and the soft giggles of Lila echoing in the yard as Lucas chased her with a paper airplane he'd folded himself. Maya often sat by the window with her tea, sketching those peaceful moments in pencil. Lucas tying Lila's shoelaces, or the way he leaned in to listen to her animated stories told through sign language after dinner. Love didn't come with fireworks. It arrived in the way Lucas washed the dishes even when Maya cooked, in how he gently draped a jacket over her shoulders when the wind picked up, in how he gave her space, but never made her feel alone. One afternoon, Lucas said, "What do you think about a picnic?" Maya nodded, surprised by how easily the idea made her smile. They packed sandwiches, apple juice, a blanket, and a basket full of paints for Lila. They spread out on a grassy hill near the lake. The wind was soft, the sunlight golden, and Lila was finger painting with gleeful abandon, while Lucas let her smudge blue streaks on his cheeks. "You know," Maya whispered, eyes still on her daughter, "this moment, it feels like a dream I once thought I wasn't allowed to dream anymore." Lucas didn't answer right away. He looked at her, his gaze warm like the sun dipping into the water. And then he said, "Sometimes old dreams come back in a new shape." Minutes later, Lila ran too close to the edge of the lake and slipped. A small gasp escaped her lips. Sharp, frightened. Maya froze, but Lucas moved first. He dashed down, splashing into the shallow water and pulling her from the mud, cradling her trembling body close to his chest. Lila wrapped her arms around his neck, soaked and shaking, and then, for the first time in 2 years, she spoke. "Thank you, Papa." Lucas froze. Maya stood at the edge of the lake, hands over her mouth, tears spilling freely. In that moment, every fear, every doubt, every wall they had built vanished. This wasn't a marriage of convenience. This wasn't temporary kindness. This was family, built on trust, held together by love. Maya noticed it during the 3rd week after the wedding. Every Thursday evening, right at 6:30 p.m., Lucas would quietly leave the house. He'd kiss her cheek and Lila's forehead, say, "Just something I need to take care of," and disappear until nearly 10 p.m. At first, Maya thought little of it, but by the 3rd week, a gentle curiosity crept into her mind. Lucas never took a laptop. He never mentioned work. And when he returned, there was always a faint scent on his shirt. Not cologne, but antiseptic, paper, and something unexplainably warm. He never looked tired. In fact, he looked more at peace. Maya tried not to think about it too much. But one Thursday night, after he left, she grabbed her coat and keys, not out of suspicion, but because she needed to understand. She followed his car from a distance, trailing through Portland's quiet streets. Eventually, Lucas pulled into a small parking lot beside a simple white building, St. Alara Children's Hospital. Maya parked a distance away. Her hands trembled slightly as she watched Lucas enter the hospital with a light gray tote bag in hand. 10 minutes passed, then 20, and then, heart pounding, Maya stepped inside. In the pediatric oncology wing, she found a room that looked like a portal to another world. Animal-themed carpet, rainbow-painted walls, soft golden lighting. 6 children sat in a circle, cuddling pillows, tiny frames wrapped in sweaters and beanies, heads bald but eyes glowing. Lucas sat in the center, holding a thick storybook. His voice was warm, deep, alive. And the brave little rabbit didn't run. He stood before the wolf and said, "I'm not afraid anymore, because I've learned to love myself." The children burst into laughter. A small boy clapped. A girl tugged on Lucas's sleeve, whispering something that made him chuckle. Maya stood just outside the door, hands trembling. She watched how Lucas leaned toward each child, how he didn't pity them. He respected them, as if they weren't patients but tiny warriors. A passing nurse noticed her. "You're his wife?" she asked gently. Maya hesitated, then nodded. "He's been coming here every week," the nurse said with a soft smile. "For almost 2 years. Never late. He says these kids give him a reason to get out of bed every morning." Maya's throat tightened. She stayed until the story time ended. Lucas didn't notice her. He knelt to hug each child, careful and tender, as if they were made of porcelain. When he finally stepped out of the room, Maya emerged from the shadows. Lucas startled. "What are you doing here?" "I followed you," she admitted. "Not because I didn't trust you. I just needed to know what makes you live like this." Lucas didn't look angry, just quiet, almost ungrateful. "Because," he whispered, "I don't have a family anymore, but I can still make someone feel loved." Maya stepped forward, placed her hand on his chest. "You do have a family, Lucas," she said, voice shaking. "You have me and Lila." And for the first time, she kissed him, not out of obligation, not to thank him, but because her heart, long lost and hesitant, had finally chosen a place to stay. Love doesn't explode like fireworks. It drifts in quietly, like a falling leaf, silent but undeniable. After the night Maya discovered Lucas's secret at the children's hospital, things between them began to change. Not suddenly. There were no grand declarations, no dramatic embraces in the rain. Just small acts, patient ones. Like how Lucas asked, "Did you sleep well?" every morning. Or how he always remembered she didn't take sugar in her coffee. Or how he placed a warm glass of water on her nightstand each night. No words, no fuss. Lucas never forced his presence into her space. He didn't ask her to feel anything before she was ready. He simply showed up, calmly, steadily, like he'd always be there if she needed him. One evening, Maya came home exhausted from a long therapy session with a nonverbal girl. Her body ached. Her head spun. She planned to go straight to bed. But Lucas had already prepared chicken soup, placed a warm towel on the armrest, and simply said, "Go shower. I'll heat it up again when you're done." She didn't reply. She just looked at him. This man who owed her nothing, yet stood here with a kind of gentleness she hadn't known in years. Lila, too, was changing. Every morning she ran into Lucas's room just to say, "Good morning, Papa," and hug him tight. In the evenings, they sat together drawing, signing to each other in their own quiet world. Lucas didn't push his way into their lives. He was simply patient enough to be let in. And Maya realized she had stopped keeping count of the days since their impromptu wedding. She had stopped bracing for goodbye. She had started living. One afternoon while Lucas was out, Maya opened his closet to find laundry. Inside, neatly folded shirts and organized drawers. But tucked behind a row of ties, she found a small wooden box. Inside, a broken necklace, a one-armed wooden doll, a faded ultrasound photo, and at the bottom, a letter never sent, written in careful cursive, "If I'm ever brave enough to love again, will you smile, Emily?" Maya folded the letter, put everything back. Her chest ached, not with jealousy, but with understanding. Lucas hadn't moved on by forgetting. He was moving forward to honor what he'd lost. That night, as they sat watching a cartoon movie, Maya leaned her head on Lucas's shoulder. He didn't flinch. He simply rested his hand on hers. "I don't know when I started to trust you," she whispered. Lucas smiled. "Maybe when I trusted you first." Rain tapped gently against the windows, drawing soft trails across the glass. Portland was slipping into early winter, cold, quiet, and still. Inside the lakeside home, the golden glow of the fireplace spread warmth across the hardwood floor. Maya sat quietly on the sofa, a lukewarm cup of tea forgotten in her hands. Her heart was full of feelings she couldn't quite name. Upstairs, Lila was asleep. The little girl had long grown comfortable in this house, with the sound of Lucas's footsteps each morning, with the way he'd lift her up and say, "Good morning, Papa's princess." Papa. That word now came naturally from Lila's lips. She called Lucas that every day. No more hesitation, no more cautious glances. Every morning, she ran into his room, climbed onto his bed and shouted, "Papa, wake up!" laughing when he pretended to snore loudly. At every meal, she signed the name of each dish and always pointed to Lucas first when handing out desserts. "Papa's first." Maya had watched it all. Not a temporary connection, but something real, something deep blooming between her daughter and the man who had been a stranger only 2 months before. Lucas never made a show of himself. He didn't try to be a hero. He was just there, constant, gentle, intentional. And somehow that quiet presence had stirred something in Maya's heart. Tonight she knew she couldn't hold it in any longer. Lucas was in the kitchen, drying the last plate. He liked to finish things neatly. When he turned around, towel in hand, Maya stood up and walked toward him. Her heart pounded wildly, but her steps were sure. "Lucas," she said softly, almost like she was testing how his name felt on her lips. He looked up, eyes steady and calm, always listening. "I need to tell you something, and I've been holding it back for too long." Lucas nodded, saying nothing. "When you asked me to marry you, I thought it was just a way to not feel abandoned," Maya began, her voice trembling. "I thought it was kindness, rescue, a strange arrangement between two broken people. But then, day by day, you taught me what it meant to be seen. Truly seen. Not pitied, not tolerated, but valued." Her voice broke. "You never asked me, when will you get over it? You just stayed, quiet and steady, like sunlight coming through the window. You made my coffee the way I like it. You remembered to turn off the hallway light because I'm afraid of the dark. And most of all, you love Lila not because she's my daughter, but because you truly see her as your own." Lucas stepped closer, but didn't interrupt. "And because of all of that," she whispered, "I love you." She took a deep breath, and this time said it again, clearly, confidently. "I love you, Lucas." Silence. Just the rain outside. Just their breathing, mingled in the warm stillness between them. Lucas didn't rush. He didn't pull her into a cinematic embrace. He simply stepped closer and gently cupped her face in both hands, as if she were something sacred. "I love you too," he said, voice low and raw. Not because you need me, he paused, his eyes wet, but because you make me want to live. Maya let out a soft laugh through her tears. You know, I think this is the first time I haven't been afraid to love someone. Lucas smiled. He kissed her forehead first, then her lips. A kiss that wasn't hesitant, wasn't born of comfort or sympathy. It was a promise, an answer, a true beginning. Later that night, as they lay side by side, fingers intertwined beneath the covers, Maya turned to him and whispered, "Do you know what made me realize you feel like home?" Lucas turned his head, curiosity in his eyes. "It's when Lila started calling you Papa," she said softly. "And I realized I felt the same." He chuckled gently. "Well then," he whispered, "we really are a family now." Maya sat quietly on the porch bench, cradling a cup of ginger tea. She wasn't drinking it, just breathing through the nausea that had hit her for the third time that day. Lucas had just left to take Lila to school. The house was peaceful, but Maya's mind wasn't. For over a week, her body had felt different. Dizzy spells, fatigue, sudden aversions to food smells, things she couldn't ignore, but didn't dare name. She looked down at her trembling hands and finally stood up. In the bathroom, Maya pulled out a pregnancy test from the back of the drawer, something she never thought she'd need again. 10 minutes later, she sat on the cold tile floor, shaking, staring at the result. 2 lines. Positive. That afternoon, Lila came home with a box of cookies in hand, proudly waving it at her mother. But just moments later, the little girl's cheerful expression softened into concern. "Mama tired?" she signed. Maya nodded, forcing a smile. "Just a little dizzy, sweetheart." Lila put the cookies down and walked over, standing in front of her mother with careful eyes. Then, with a maturity far beyond her 6 years, she placed her hands gently over her own belly and signed, "Mama's growing a secret." Maya froze. Her heart pounded. Tears welled up without warning. Just then, Lucas walked through the door and paused, seeing Maya crouched beside Lila, shoulders shaking slightly. "What's going on?" he asked, hurrying over. "Are you okay?" Maya didn't answer. She simply reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the test, holding it out with a trembling hand. Lucas took it and stared for a moment, reading the result. His calm eyes began to shine. Then he dropped to his knees, not in pain, but in awe. "Is this real?" he whispered. "We're having a baby?" Maya nodded, smiling through her tears. Lila looked between them, then suddenly beamed and burst out, "I'm going to be the best big sister in the world." She wrapped her arms around her mother's belly, then turned to hug Lucas tightly, giggling with joy. No more words were needed. Inside that little house, everything was already enough. Love, trust, and a brand new beginning. Late afternoon, Lila was coloring on the living room floor, while Maya sat nearby, gently rubbing her belly as the baby kicked for the first time. Lucas was outside, tending to the garden, a new habit he had picked up lately. He said flowers made the mind feel lighter. Suddenly, Lila looked up, glanced at both adults, then signed with a serious expression. "Mom and Papa should get married again, this time because you love each other." Maya and Lucas exchanged a glance. Neither of them replied at first, but in that silence, their eyes said everything. This wasn't just a sweet suggestion from a 6-year-old. It was something their hearts had been quietly longing for. 1 week later, in the little backyard behind their home, where soft fairy lights were strung along the fence, where the roses bloomed gently, and the breeze was just enough to move Maya's hair across her cheek, they got married again. No crowd, no formalities. Just 3 hearts, 1 promise, and the kind of love that didn't need to be hidden anymore. Lucas wore a simple white shirt with a sprig of lavender pinned to his chest. Maya wore a plain white dress, holding the hand of her daughter, the most special maid of honor in the world. When it came time to speak, Lucas looked at Maya, his eyes misty. I used to think my life was over, he said, but you and Lila saved me. You taught me how to love again, and Lila taught me how to live again. Maya smiled, squeezing his hand gently. You made me believe in love again, she said softly, not with promises, but with all the quiet things you do every single day. The breeze brushed past them. Lila clapped loudly. Now kiss, she shouted joyfully. And so they kissed, not because they had to, but because they truly, deeply wanted to. The evening after their garden wedding, Maya sat at the edge of the bed, holding Lila's small hand as the three of them read a bedtime story together. Lucas was in the kitchen making hot cocoa, still wearing the simple white shirt from the ceremony. No one said it aloud, but the house seemed to breathe in a new rhythm, the quiet, steady heartbeat of a real family. The house breathed quietly after the ceremony, but happiness can be fragile, and sometimes life tests it too soon. 2 days later, Maya woke up with sharp dizziness and a wave of nausea that stole her breath away. She thought it was just fatigue after all the excitement, but by midday she collapsed in the bathroom. Lucas heard the crash and rushed in. Maya was on the floor, pale, her breath short. I can't see, she whispered. My head hurts so much. The hospital, emergency room, harsh white lights and the shrill sound of sirens cutting through the quiet morning. Lucas held her hand tightly as the nurses checked her blood pressure. The numbers were dangerously high. The doctor didn't hesitate. Emergency C-section, preeclampsia. The baby wasn't full term, high risk. Lucas felt like his world was spinning, but he never let go. Even when his hands were ice cold and his chest felt hollow, he kept holding Maya's hand until the OR doors closed. I'm not going anywhere, he whispered, voice cracking. I'm right here, always. Time froze. Lucas sat in the hallway, hunched over, head in his hands. He had already known loss. He didn't think he could survive another one. The doors opened. Congratulations, Mr. Marchand, the nurse smiled. It's a boy. Both mom and baby are safe. Lucas sank into the chair, trembling. He hadn't realized he was holding his breath until it all came out in a shaky exhale. For the first time in years, he let himself cry without shame. Maya opened her eyes to soft yellow light in the recovery room. Lucas was beside her, eyes swollen from tears but filled with something new. Relief. Joy. We have a son, he whispered. Julien Emilien Marchand. He's perfect, healthy, and he has your curls. Maya smiled weakly. Julien. Before she could say more, the door opened and Lila walked in. Her face lit up the room. She climbed carefully onto the bed and gently placed her hand on Maya's belly, the place that had been home to her baby brother. Then Lila leaned in close, her small hand still resting over Maya's belly, now soft and quiet. She whispered, he was born from love. And in that instant, every pain, every scar, every lonely night, they all made sense. Lucas turned away, wiping his eyes. Maya reached out and held her daughter's hand in one, Lucas's in the other. There were no more words. They had faced heartbreak, loss, doubt, fear. But now in that quiet little room, 3 people, 4 hearts, and one unspoken truth. Love had chosen them, and they had chosen each other. Family wasn't where they began. It was where they had chosen to stay outside. The rain had stopped. Inside, love stayed, quiet, steady, and finally, real.